Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga. Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga. Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga. Jai Jai Yashoda Nandana Shachi Shuta Gaura Chandra. Jai Jai Jasoda Nandana Shachi Shuta Gaura Chandra. Jai Jai Rohini Nandana Balarama Nityananda. Jai Jai Mahavishnu Avatar Sri Advaita Chandra. Jai Jai Swarup Rupa Sanatana Rai Ramananda. Jai Jai Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Uriya Gauriya Jato Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Tomra Sabai Mili Koro Daya Ami Ati Manda Jeno Akul Prane Gaite Pari Hanitai Gauranga. Jeno Janme Janme Gaite Pari Hanitai Gauranga. Jeno Akul Prane Gaite Pari Hanitai Gauranga Gai Jeno Hanitai Gauranga Gai Jeno Hanitai Gauranga. Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga. Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga. Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga. Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga. Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yutapada Kamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitanscha Nimdantam Pulakotkarena Vikasat Nipa Prasuna Chaving Prodhi Kritya Bujadvayam Hari Hari Tyuchaivadantam Muhu Nrityantam Galadasru Nirjara Chayaik Sinchantamurvitalam Gayantam Nijaparshadaik Parivritam Tam Gora Chandram Stumaham Jayati Jayati Radha Prema Sarairagadha Jayati Jayati Krishna Tatra Sa Swada Trishna Jayati Jayati Vrindam Tat Sakinam Dvayaikyam Jayati Jayati Vrinda Kananam Tat Swadhama Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So my idea is just to start reading the Bhakti-rasamrita-sindhu from the beginning of the second section. So here I'll just read what's here in the Sanskrit and I'll explain. So we'll just do it that way until it gets really boring. So for those people who are interested in learning a little bit of Sanskrit, that's unfortunately the way I do things mostly. And I'll try as hard as I can not to speculate too much. But at any rate, here, so this is Sri Sri Bhakti-rasamrita-sindhu. So Sindhu means the ocean or a river. And Amrita, it's a Rasamrita, the ambrosia of Bhakti Rasa. So it's the ocean of the ambrosia of Bhakti Rasa. So Bhakti Rasa is the subject of this book. What is the Bhakti Rasa? So, of course, this is a big discussion. So last week, or the last time we talked, I mentioned a few things about the subject of rasa and this long tradition of rasa that's there. It's, well, usually the dates that are given for Bharata, right? I should put my image here. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Anyway, let me, this is being shown on the screen. Okay. Right. So, yeah, so Bhakti Rasa. So this subject of rasa is something that's been going on for a long time. And basically the idea is that's given from Bharata. So Bharata is usually given as the first person who started this whole discussion of rasa. That's the first book really where you find the word rasa being spoken of in this kind of technical way. So even though sometimes, let's say in the Bhagavad Gita, you have rasoham apsu kaunteya. So there it just means the taste. Because why is that being used? Because rasa is one of the 5 kinds of sense interaction, right? You have rupa, you have the taste is associated with earth. I hope. No, smell is associated with earth. Taste is associated with water. Right? That's why in the Gita, when Krishna says rasoham apsu kaunteya, it means that the essential characteristic that's there of water, namely the taste, the capacity to transmit taste, that Krishna says, I am that. So these were considered to be what we call the Vibhuti Yoga texts in the Bhagavad Gita. So in the Vibhuti Yoga texts in the Bhagavad Gita, like the 10th chapter is the main one, that you have where Krishna is talking about his own glories in some way. And the basic idea is to get to get the listener to start thinking of ways that you can see God and see the presence of God in one's own natural surroundings. So sometimes, people want to see where will show me God. So this is how Krishna is saying, I'm showing you God. Rasoham apsu konteya, I am the taste in water, just like I am the smell in earth, right? And just as I am the form in fire and the sound in ether. And Krishna is just saying that this is a way you can detect my presence. And in fact, at the end of the 10th chapter, he says, where yad vibhuti matsatvam srimad urjitam evava tad evavagachatvam mama tejong shasambhava. That it's all just a fraction, a fragment of my splendor. Whatever glories you see in this world, and the best of everything, the most beautiful of everything, and the essence of everything, that is actually Krishna. So this is a very fundamental thing that's being spoken of. Is there are several sections there in the Gita, especially the 10th chapter, and also the universal form. The 11th chapter is also meant to convey pretty much the same kind of information, a way of seeing God. And people who are, generally speaking, people who are who are faithful and who have Shraddha, they find it counterintuitive. It's not a question, when you believe in God, it's not so much a question of intellectual argument. You can argue about the existence of God till the cows come home, as they say. But a person who is not inclined to accept such things, even with the same perception, you may even be able to get an atheist, or one of these atheist scientists like Dawkins or somebody else, or what's the other one there? DeGrasse Tyson, there is another atheist scientist, and so on, and they'll talk about how amazing the natural world is and how amazing the creation is, but somehow they don't want to involve any deity with that. Whereas for a person who is a devotee, for him it's almost impossible to conceive of an existence that doesn't include God. I mean, it seems to be somehow fundamental to the believing mentality that existence itself is the signature of God's existence. And you can also do it the other way, just like if you look at the way that the rishis in the Upanishads thought about it. That the very fact of existence itself, that Brahman is existence, right? That the fact that there is existence at all, that existence itself is Brahman. That is Sat. Sat is Brahman. Sat means existence, and then Chit means consciousness. So that's the second thing. And Ananda means joy. So those three things are immutable characteristics, or the fundamental characteristics of Brahman that everybody can recognize and relate to. How can you have existence? Existence is itself Brahman. How can you have consciousness? So consciousness is itself Brahman. How can you have joy? Well, joy itself is inherent. It's Brahman. At any rate, so this idea of rasa, it goes back in the Taittiriya Upanishad. You have raso vaisaha. So now this word raso vaisaha, when it talks about raso vaisaha, there it gives a bit of a definition, a further definition, because it says raso vaisaha. It's talking about Brahman again. So it says that Brahman is rasa. So now in that particular case, is he talking about the same kind of rasa as the rasa in water? Is he talking about taste as a physical sensation that one experiences the pleasure of taste, and that's the extent of what the meaning of rasa is? Well, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, the word rasa is being used in some different way, and it actually defines it. It says, rasam yevayam labdva anandi bhavati. So rasa is the thing which, once you get it, you feel joy. So it's somehow another that this is the rasa of creation, the rasa of simply existing, that the pleasure of somehow existing, that the ananda comes from recognizing or from experiencing God as rasa. So there, rasa, the experience of God is also being called rasa there. And then to make things so you have, so by the time that the Bhagavatam comes into circulation, the Srimad Bhagavatam, you already have a long tradition of discussion about rasa. But the Bhagavatam is the first of the Puranas. Right? In the other Puranas, you may have some, like the Agni Purana is famous for having a section about rasa. Alankar, it's called the Alankara section of the Agni Purana. And it's considered to be quite ancient and to be quite, it's even quoted, I was looking today in the Ujjvala-nilamani, the Jiva Rupa Goswami is quoting Agni Purana. And some other people also quote from Agni Purana, but more you're going to see some other authorities being quoted for the purpose of, the understanding of rasa. The Agni Purana also seems to be, quite honestly, derived from Bharata, even though there's argument going on about whether Agni Purana precedes or comes after Bharata, Nāṭya-śāsttra. Right, so in the Bhagavatam, then you get the Bhagavatam right away. The rasa is being mentioned several times. Right? At the very beginning of the Bhagavatam, the third verse states that Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. Right? They're saying that it says that drink the rasa of the Bhagavatam. So there, when you talk about Bhagavatam rasa, the rasa that's related to Bhagavan, you're getting into Bhakti rasa. For the first time, really, that's where Bhakti rasa is introduced. But most of the people who were writing about Alankar, about Natya, about rasa, right? Natya means drama, theater. So rasa is coming, the whole discussion about rasa is coming directly out of theater. And if we don't understand that, we have a great deal of difficulty understanding the Bhakti-rasamrita-sindhu and trying to understand what Rupa Goswami is talking about when he's talking about rasa. What does he mean? How is it? For most people, it's a bit vague. They think that rasa is something magical that happens as a result of one's as a result of one's effort, to one's tapasya, one's vairagya, and one's sadhana, and so on. And they don't look at the term in its proper context of Nāṭya-śāsttra, its proper context of theater. And then when you've thought about it from the point of view of theater, you also have to understand it's got a great deal to do with psychology. So once you've sort of brought these different dimensions of understanding, you have psychology, you have theater, and then you have bhakti. So here, to go back to the screen here, right? So you have so here it says Sri Bhakti-rasamrita-sindhu, so that's the name of the book. Now here's the introduction to the second part, which is called the dakṣiṇa-vibhāga. So I thought vibhāga means just section, right? So dakṣiṇa means the south, dakṣiṇa means south. And you have four directions. Purva is east, dakṣiṇa is south, paschima is west, and uttara is north. So the four sections of the Bhakti-rasamrita-sindhu have been given these names. So I call it the eastern sea, the southern sea, the western sea, and the northern sea. So this is the southern sea. And what is it about? Samanya Bhagavad Bhakti Rasa Nirupako. So Samanya means general, right? And Nirupaka means descriptive. So describing the rasa of devotion to Bhagavan in a general way. So it's a general description of Bhagavad Bhakti Rasa. So if you look at it that way, the explanation of rasa, which more or less follows the same categories that were in the previous traditional Nāṭya-śāsttra, starting with Bharata Muni, are all being covered. The same terminology is being used, almost without change. Here and there, Rupa Goswami makes a slight adjustment, but for the most part, the terminology that is being used from the Nāṭya-śāsttra has just been adopted wholesale into Rupa Goswami's discussion. Rupa Goswami seems to be more, let's say, indebted to a work that comes from South India, from Karnataka also, which is called the Rasa Sudhakara, or Rasa Sudhakara. So Sudhakara, Rasa Sudha, Sudha means the same thing as Amrita. So Rasamrita and Rasa Sudha is used almost the same terminology. But he doesn't say Sudhakara means the moon, right? Because in the Sanskritic tradition, or in the classical Sanskrit tradition, the moon is said to be emitting rasa, emitting amrita. So the rays of the moon, like if you look at even in the Bhagavad Gita, there in the 15th chapter, it talks about the moon, that the moon, that the moon is the god of agriculture, and because it's seen that the moonlight is understood to be helping the plants to grow and the crops to grow. So there's a definite role, not just of the rain, but also of the moon to participate in the process of agriculture. And that is because the moon is spreading these nectar rays. The moonlight are rays of nectar. So you often see this metaphor being used for Krishna. So Krishna is also the moon, right? So he is the Bhakti-rasamrita-murti. He is the form, and the very, very first verse of the Bhakti-rasamrita-sindhu is also like this kind of metaphor. Right? It says there that Bhakti-rasamrita-murti prasimara amrita-tarka palihi. Is it Kalita, Lalita, I've forgotten his, but Radha Prayan Vidhur Jayati. So Radha Prayan Vidhur Jayati. The whole first verse of the Bhakti-rasamrita-sindhu ends with Radha Prayan Vidhur Jayati. So the word Vidhu means the moon in this particular case. So glorifies the moon. But this moon is the Bhakti-rasamrita-murti, that the moon itself is seen as being the form of containing all the rasas within it. So that's the moon, but also Krishna is Bhakti-rasamrita-murti, because all the 12 rasas and all the other and all the other kinds of rasa are all present unlimitedly in Krishna. So Bhakti-rasamrita-murti. And then the other examples that are given, Taraka Pali. Taraka Pali means the Taraka Pali, these are names of gopis, but it also means all the stars. So it's the relationship that the moon has with the stars. You see that example in the Rasa Lila also, that Krishna appeared in the midst of the gopis like the moon surrounded by the heavenly bodies, by the stars in the sky. And then, Kalita, the Shama Lalita. So the other gopis are mentioned. Shama is mentioned. Lalita is mentioned. And finally, Radha Prayan. So all these other stars and the asterisms and all the, this astrological picture of Krishna and the gopis as the moon and the stars. That's right there in the very first verse of the Bhakti-rasamrita-sindhu. So Krishna is being compared to the moon in that respect, and that comes up quite often. So samanya, general. So the general, a general explanation, or a general, let's say, treatise on Bhakti Rasa, Bhagavad Bhakti Rasa. So one other thing that I should mention here is that, is Bhakti a rasa? Well, the other previous speakers and writers on rasa had a problem with calling Bhakti a rasa. Right? They didn't want to accept it. They accepted Shanta, and so they were ready to accept Shanta rasa. But they included Bhakti. They didn't consider Bhakti to be a separate category, but Bhakti to somehow or other be subjected to, or a part of, or somehow connected to Shanta rasa. And what they had a tendency to do was to say that Bhakti is what you call a sādhaka-deha. So as we go through this, we'll learn a little bit more about a sādhaka-deha. But a sādhaka-deha is fundamentally a secondary emotional experience. So you have your sthāyi-bhāvas. Your sthāyi-bhāvas are your principal mood that is let's say, the pillar of your own personality in relationship to God. And and then you have these secondary emotions that arise as a result of different stimuli. And so those emotions rise and then they descend. So bhakti, the feelings towards the deity or feelings towards God, were always considered to be secondary. Something, oh, you feel devotion to God because you want something or because you're afraid. And so it's the rasa of fear is the dominant mood, and bhakti is something secondary. Or let's say, for instance, you go to Shiva and you're worshiping for a wife, or a woman goes to Shiva and worships Shiva in order to have some, like the gopis when they went to worship Katyayani. Right? The gopis who worship Katyayani, they say, that, you know, Nanda Sutta, Prathamā, give me my, give me Krishna, give me the son of Nanda as a husband. Prathamā. Let me, be kind, O Katyayani Devi, O Mother Goddess, and give me Krishna as a husband. So there, the Madhura rasa is primary. It's wanting Krishna as a husband. And the bhakti to Katyayani is subordinate to that. It's serving that the emotional the feeling of devotion that's there is playing a secondary role. The principal role is the Madhura rasa that the gopis are feeling to have Krishna as their husband. So basically, is bhakti a rasa or not? Well, some people did want to include it, some people didn't. But the prevailing opinion at the time of the arrival on the scene of Rupa Goswami was dominated by a work that's called Sahitya Darpan. And then there's another one called Kavya Prakasha. And both these works are more or less inimical to the idea of bhakti being a rasa. So there was no strong tradition of bhakti as a rasa, as a literary rasa. So now we have to understand, I'm going to use the term literary rasa, but it's kind of hard to pin down because I could call it theater. It's mostly coming out of theater. But the Bharata Nāṭya-śāsttra is not just a source of theater, but everything was considered integral to theater. Even now, if you go and you probably see some traditional Indian theater, right? Even if you go to, let's say, Vrindavan, and you look at the Rasa Lila, the way that Rasa Lila is done. So Rasa Lila is done, everyone's dressed up in the costumes. There's a lot of dancing, there's a lot of singing, there's a lot of poetry being read out, like that. So that the spoken word is also being a part. The different analysis of poetic language begins with the Nāṭya-śāsttra. So like all the different alankaras, the different rhetorical devices, these are first described there in Nāṭya-śāsttra by Bharata. And then as time went by, what happened is that different sections of the Nāṭya-śāsttra were, let's say, divvied up, and somebody would concentrate on one or the other aspect of it. Now, some books were considered more encyclopedic, covering all the different subjects, and others were more concentrated simply on linguistic aspects.
or others were more concentrated simply on the dramatic aspects, and so on. There's an awful lot of stuff there. And in our tradition, you have Rupa Goswami. He's written Bhakti-rasamrita-sindhu. He's written Ujjvala-nilamani. And then he's also written another work called Nāṭya-śāsttra. So Nāṭya-śāsttra. So all those three books, you could take that, let's say, for instance, they all are tied to the original Nāṭya-śāsttra that was written by Bharata. But then different works came on later on, and people expanded on different aspects of the of what Bharata Muni had begun. So here, this second chapter, this second section, this southern section of the Bhakti-rasamrita-sindhu is called Samanya Bhagavad Bhakti Rasa Nirupaka. So this Nirupaka means this Nirupanam, Nirupaka. It means it's describing or outlining, like the Rupa. Let's say describing the form, where Rupa there is the form, describing the form of Bhakti Rasa in a general way. So this is quite a long chapter, and there's but it has all these 5 aspects. So the first chapter here, so Pratham Laharī, each one of the chapters in the Bhakti-rasamrita-sindhu is called the laharī. So laharī is a wave. So it's called a wave. So the first wave of the southern part is called Vibhāva-akhya. Akhya just means named. So the first wave is named Vibhāva. So this Vibhāva is the first technical term. So the technical term, I don't know if in the commentaries are going to explain it, but Vibhāva means to cause. It's from the causative, it's from a causative form. So it means that it's bringing into creation, it's creating, it's causative. So that the Vibhāvas are the causal factors. A causal factor means what? So this is something that's going to be discussed, of course, in here and there, that what are the causes of bhakti and so on. Well, you can't really call Vibhāvas the causes of bhakti. They're really well, you can cause them. It does say the word karana or hetu, these are other terms that are sometimes used for Vibhāva, but awakening the bhava. Right? So you have the sthāyi-bhāva, which is the main feeling that you have, the main relationship or the main attitude that you have towards Krishna, or actually, well, as we go through it a little bit more, in relationship, your emotional, the emotional composition of your personality. Right? So each person has a personality. Let's say if we look at the 8 rasas or the 9 rasas, someone might be predominantly Shanta rasa, someone might be prominently Vira rasa, someone else might be prominently Bhaya or Jugupsa, right? They have a tendency to be triggered, let's say, by the particular causal factors that are going to trigger that mood. They'll be more susceptible. Like, some people are more angry. And if you start talking to them about politics, then they get worked up very quickly. And they'll want to go out and start a revolution or whatever. But most people, so that you have the most people are being provoked by ideas that lead to heroism or that lead to love. But also you have this Shanta rasa, this idea of going away from material life, of rejecting the possibility of happiness in the world and looking for happiness in the Atma, or looking for happiness in God. So then he starts, this is just a Shri Sri Radha Govinda Devo Vijayete. And there's just this, just an auspicious invocation at the beginning of the chapter. Here, Jiva Goswami's worshipable deity is Radha Govinda Dev, and Vijayete, that's the dual, third person dual, because Radha and Govinda, there's 2 people there, so it's a dvandva samasa, it's a dual compound, and so the verb has to agree, it also has to be in the dual. So instead of saying Vijayate, we say Vijayete, and the plural is Vijayante.
So that's in the Sanskrit, requires agreement of the subject with the verb. And so here it's dual, Govinda, Radha, Govinda, Devo. And the reason there's two Shris is that one Shri is for Radha and one Shri is for Govinda. So all glories to Radha and Govinda Dev. Jai Sri Radhe. So the first verse is one of these are, Rupa Goswami is rather famous for these because he offers his obeisances to Krishna, but he makes it double meaning so that he has also for his guru, Sanatan Goswami. So each one of these verses, is about 5 or 6 of them. And also in the Ujjvala-nilamani, he does the same thing. And I think he does it elsewhere also. Sometimes he uses the same verses again. But this is a verse that is both to Krishna and to Sanatana Goswami. There you see Sanatana Tanur Jayati. Prabalam Ananya Shrayina Nishevitaha Sahaja Rupena Agadamano Mathurayam Sada Sanatana Tanur Jayati. So here, the first one, Agadamano Sanatana Tanur, those are both the nominative cases and going together. So the Agadhamana, so Agadhamana means the Krishna who defeated Aga demon. Actually, Dhamana means to defeat or to conquer, let's say, to control. So Agadhamana, to beat down the demon called Aghasura. But the word Aga also means just sin, right? So it doesn't have to mean Agadam. It's a name of Krishna, Agadhamana, right? So Agajit, there's many of Krishna's names have Agha in them. And they might be referring to Aghasura, or they might just be referring to sin in a general way. So in this case, both of those meanings are to be applied. You have Sanatana Tanuhu. So Sanatana Tanu, Sanatana means eternal, and Tanu means body. So one who has an eternal body, that's Krishna. So Agadhamana, the defeater of Aga demon, he has an eternal body, and may he be eternally Sada, glorious, Jayati, Mathurayam, in Mathura. And now the first line, yeah, so Prabalam, Ananya Shrayina, Nishevitaha, Sahaja Rupena. So here Sahaja Rupena, so Sahaja Rupena means, Sahaja means natural, and Rupena means form, right? So in a natural form or in a natural way, Ananya Shrayina, someone who has taken exclusive shelter. Nishevita, he is being served, and Prabalam, with great force. So this Sanatana Tanu, Krishna, is being served in Mathura, and he is being eternally glorious in Mathura, being served with intensity by devotees, by a devotee who has taken exclusive shelter, Ananya Shrayina, and who is doing it Sahaja Rupena, in a natural manner. Sahaja here means natural. But Sahaja also can mean brother, twin, brother. Sahaja. Sahaja means born from the, born together. So born of the same mother. Sahaja. So Sahaja Rupena. So Sanatana Goswami is being served by his brother Rupa, who has taken exclusive shelter of him, or exclusive shelter of Mathura, right? And is serving him with intensity, Prabalam. So in the case of, if you're looking at the verse as being Sanatan, then Agadhamana means that he's destroying sins. And if you look at Agadhamana as being the name, then Ananya Shrayina and Sahaja Rupena don't refer to Rupa Goswami directly, but they refer to any devotee who has taken exclusive shelter of Krishna in the Dham. So there you have that. So you see, like here in the commentary, this word pakshe. So Jiva Goswami, Navyakyata means Jiva Goswami doesn't say anything about this verse.
I think he doesn't think it's necessary because he's already explained verses of this sort before. And I think for most people, it would be fairly obvious that double meaning that's there, especially when you're used to seeing this kind of thing from Rupa Goswami already. Because he does the same thing, I'm telling you, he's got the same thing. He's got a verse like that at the beginning of Ujjvala-nilamani, at the beginning of the plays. Every book that Rupa Goswami wrote, I can't say every book, but most of them. Certainly Dan Keli Komudi. The Hamsadutta and Uddhava Sandesh don't have it. Lagu Bhagavatamrita, maybe, I forget, I think it does have. So some of the works don't have a verse necessarily to Sanatana Goswami, but in the Bhakti-rasamrita-sindhu there are several, and they all have that same characteristic of being a play on words, so that you can read it as either being directly to Krishna or to Sanatana Goswami. So there you have just this thing, just read Mukunda. So Mukunda is a disciple of Krishnadas Kaviraj, Mukunda Goswami. He didn't write very much in this commentary on the Bhakti-rasamrita-sindhu, which is, let's say, a moderate contribution. It's not, and if one never read Mukunda's commentary, not much would be lost. There would be there are some insights that are valuable, but mostly we are interested in Jiva and Vishwanatha. And most of the time, Vishwanath follows Sri Jiva, but sometimes he disagrees. Not that often, but here and there. And also Vishwanath has a tendency, I mean, of course, Sri Jiva is extremely learned and learned in all the departments of Sanskritic knowledge. But Vishwanath also is especially strong in the rasa texts and in Nāṭya texts and in poetics. I mean, Vishwanath is a very high-level scholar and a rasika devotee. So, he says here, Vishwanath just adds a little bit here. He says, Krishna Pakshe. So Pakshe means taking a side. So this verse has two sides. One is the Sanatana Paksha, and one is the Krishna Paksha. And Krishna Paksha, just like you have the Paksha when you're talking about the weeks, right? So you have the month. You have Krishna Paksha and you have Shukla Paksha. So Krishna Paksha means the dark half of the fortnight, or the dark fortnight, and Shukla means the light fortnight. So here Paksha, the word actually Paksha is often used to mean wing. Like a bird is called a pakshi, an entity that possesses wings. But Paksha is taking on Pakshapat. There's a lot of words with Paksha in them. Paksha means wings. So a bird has two wings. So you only have two sides. So when there's two sides of something, they're called a Paksha. It's a side. A Paksha is taken to mean side. So in this particular verse, you have two sides. One side is going with Sanatana Goswami, and the other side is going with Krishna, right? The interpretation according to Krishna, the interpretation according to Sanatana. So in this one here, Mukunda is talking about the obvious reading he's taking as being Krishna, and the less obvious reading he's taking to be to Sanatana Goswami. So here he says that Sahaja Rupena means Bhratra Rupena. So Sahaja Rupena means brother Rupa. And he has Agamatana. So that was probably the better reading here. So there's Agamatana rather than Agadamana. So Agamatana means Aparada Nashaka. So destroyer of offenses. So that's the meaning he's given there. So Sanatana has forgiven all offenses, Sanatana Goswami. So perhaps that's a reference to the famous story of Jiva Goswami and his defending Rupa Goswami's virtue, let's say. Okay, and Vishwanath says that the Sahaja Rupena means that Sahaja, so he's taking the word Sahaja to mean Bhushanadi Apeksham Vinaiva, that he doesn't have any need or dependence on any kind of
external ornaments or anything like that. He's going right to the simple essence of things. So here, that Krishna himself is being worshipped in that way. That's the sahaja rupena for Krishna. But if you take it from the point of view of Rupa Goswami, he says, Man lakshanena sahodara rupena nishevita. That he's referring back to himself. That I can be described as his brother. I am his brother and I'm serving him. And that comes down to what is the adjective for Rupa Goswami? That he doesn't have any other ashraya. He doesn't have any other refuge, right? So this is kind of good, because the ashraya is something that we're going to be looking at very shortly now in this vibhava, because ashraya is part of the vibhava, right? So ananya. So what does that mean? What does it mean to have no other shelter or no other refuge? He says that tanmatra vritti rupena, that everything that he does is related to him only. There's nothing else that he's doing. So there. Ananya shrayana, so we all know the importance. This is a terminology that's come. And this is really what Rupa Goswami is doing here. He's taking up from the first section, from the Eastern Sea of the Bhakti-rasamrita-sindhu. So I'm skipping over that because that section is, generally speaking, fairly well known to most devotees. Like if you look at the book, the Nectar of Devotion that Srila Prabhupada wrote, he was mostly interested in the Purva Vibhaga. He was mostly interested in the Eastern Ocean. The Eastern Ocean was mostly about the practices of Vidhi Bhakti. And it tells also a little bit about Raganuga Bhakti, but Raganuga Bhakti has maybe 15, 20 verses, and there are 300 verses about Vaidhi Bhakti. And there's also a section on Bhava Bhakti and also a section on Prema Bhakti. But those chapters are quite short. And Bhava Bhakti is going to be significant. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But of course, the Bhava Bhakti, if you look at the Bhakti-rasamrita-sindhu in the Purva Vibhaga, in the Eastern Ocean, it's talking about the goal, that there's a sadhya bhakti and there's a sadhana bhakti. So now so the sadhya and the sadhya bhakti is bhava and prema. It has two aspects, bhava and prema. And the sadhana aspect, well, that's described, that has two aspects also. It has the aspect of Vaidhi Bhakti and it has the aspect of Raganuga Bhakti. So all those things are being discussed. We're not going to talk about those too much. Well, obviously, we have to go back and refer to it from time to time. But what's happening here, the main thing to understand about what's going on in the second part, and this is where Rupa Goswami has had a stroke of genius. Because the word bhava, and there's another word, rati. So rati and bhava, these two words are both being used. We have seen the word bhava being used a lot. So you see about sthāyi-bhāva. Now Rupa Goswami says, well, the sthāyi-bhāva that we're talking about in the Nāṭya-śāsttra and the sthāyi-bhāva that we're talking about in Bhakti, there's a difference between the two. But nevertheless, we have to stick with that idea of sthāyi-bhāva as central to our understanding of this whole process. What Rupa Goswami is doing is taking this whole system of the production of rasa from a play or from a work of literature, from a poem, I think that movies are the best example in the modern day, because movies are very effective. And just like with the ancient Nāṭya-śāsttra, you have song, you have dance, you have language, you have text, you have the different acting out of the dramatic performances of the actors. All these things come together to produce rasa. And generally speaking, the rasa, I would say that rasa is the sign that a particular work of literature or a particular entertainment product has been successful, when you got a taste out of it. And really what it means is that you kind of transcended your personal, you've transcended your own personal, your own individual personality to attain something that's universal. I'm going to talk about this as we go through the description of the production of bhakti rasa. But the important thing to understand is that the cultivation of the sthāyi-bhāva, which is the essence of Vaidhi and Raganuga Bhakti. The essence of it is that you want to become a natural devotee. So you had this sahaja rupena, right? Sahaja rupena, right now as a sadhaka, the individual doesn't have love for Krishna, right? You say, I don't have love for Krishna. I may have some, something that has, by mercy has come to me. And now I'm able to appreciate, I could say that I desire bhakti. And maybe you could say that desiring bhakti and having bhakti are really not two different things, although that's also something that can be, dissected and analyzed. But just simply to want bhakti is bhakti itself, right? That to want Krishna, to want to serve Krishna, to want to feel love for Krishna, that is in itself bhakti. But when we talk about bhava as as a sadhya, as the goal of devotion, as the goal of your practice, that you externally now you're engaged in certain external activities, you're hearing, chanting, and doing other things that the great devotees have done. Mahajano yena gatak sapanta. You want to follow the activities of the great personalities. That's the best thing. Siddhasya lakshanam yatsyat sadhanam sādhakasya tat. That the characteristics of the successful or perfected devotees is going to be the practice that the ordinary aspirant tries to follow. Right? You really want to emulate the great devotees, following in the footsteps. Sad anuvritti, to follow the sadhu vartmanu vartanam. Sadhu vartmanu vartanam. What is that? That's the fourth thing. Right, when the 64 principles of devotional service, you have Guru Padasrayas Tasmat, Krishna Dikshadi Shikshanam, Gurok Seva, and then Sadhu Vartmanu Vartanam. So that's the fifth one. The first four are all connected to the Guru. Take shelter of a Guru, take initiation, take instruction from the Guru, and then serve the Guru. Those are the first four of the 64. And then the fifth one is to follow the path of the great sadhus, to follow the path of the other devotees. You're talking about a wider tradition of behavior, because even if you have a guru, the guru might not always, the guru will tell you, follow the path of the by sadhus, follow the sadhu charita, sadachar. Even if I don't do it myself, this is the standard. This is the standard that we follow. So this is why, devotees can be initiated by one guru and still associate with others, members of the same sampradaya, because the standards are spread throughout the entire tradition. All right, let's just see. I'm just going to start the second and third verse. So so let's just see. Rasamritabdher bhagesmin dvitiye dakṣiṇa-vibhāga. So in this second portion of the Bhakti-rasamrita ocean, which has been given the name the Southern Sea, Samanya Bhagavad Bhakti Rasastavad Udiryate. We're going to talk about, or we're going to give examples of general devotional rasa. So it has 5 chapters or 5 waves, which are, and the first one is called Vibhava. It's going to describe the Vibhavas. The second one, Dvitiya, to Anubhavakya. The second one is about Anubhavas. Tritiya, the third one, is about Sattvikas. The fourth one is about vyabhicharis. And the fifth, that's the Turiya, the fourth one. And the Panchami, the fifth one, is called sthāyi. It's about the sthāyi-bhāvas, or the permanent mood, or the permanent bhava. So these are all different kinds of bhavas. Right? You have the vibhava. So I already told you the vibhava means the causal factors. Anubhava means the following. Anu means following, and bhava, so following the mood. So when you have a particular mood, then you behave in a certain way, you do certain things. So just like I was quoting the verse that Sanatana Goswami quotes in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, that siddhasya lakshanam yatsyat sadhanam sadhakasya tat, that the characteristics of the siddha, the characteristics of the perfected devotee, those are the practices that the aspirant should follow. Right? So an anubhava, the anubhavas, those are the external actions that someone engages in. So a perfected devotee, he has anubhavas. Right? So kirtan, like you have a mention in the third chapter of the Purva Vibhaga, it states there quite extensively, it talks about the 9 anubhavas of someone who has reached bhava. You can look them up, right? Avyartha kalatvam. And it starts with that. You know, kshantir avyartha kalatvam. The first one is patience, forgiveness. And the second one is not willing to waste any time. And then chanting the holy name, attachment to chanting the holy name, desire to associate with devotees, hearing and chanting the Bhagavatam, having an affection for living in the Dham. All these different characteristics, these are all called anubhavas of someone who has attained to the level of bhava. And then Tritiya is the Sattvikas. So you've heard of Sattvikas, the 8 main Sattvikas. These are, so anubhavas are generally speaking conscious activities that you're doing, that you choose to chant or whatever. But Sattvikas, these are effects that arise, and they're probably the most clearly indicator of rasa. If you start crying, or if you tremble, or if you have hair standing on end, and or if you faint, or if you have if you become stunned and you can't move, all these different kinds of these sattvikas are all unconscious. They happen to you without your willing them, whereas anubhavas in general are something that you do willingly. So the difference between anubhava and sattvika is just this matter of consciousness or unconsciousness. And vyabhicharis, those are the secondary emotions that come up. They're considered like waves. The sthāyi-bhāva is considered to be like an ocean again. And the vyabhicharis are like waves in the ocean. They rise, they come up out of the ocean, and then they merge back into the ocean again. So those are, well, we'll learn more about these as we go on. And sthāyi-bhāva, that's going to be an important chapter. But you see here that he talks about sthāyi-bhāvas at the end, right? So the sthāyi-bhāvas are being spoken of at the end. You have to, you kind of have to know what they're talking about from the very beginning. But finally, when you get to the 5th chapter, then you'll be able to see it in relationship to the other 4. Okay, well, that's time for today. So I suppose I can ask you if you have any questions, even though the time, I should really be a little bit more clever about the time. But if you have any questions now, you can ask, and if not, save them for next time. All right, then. Are you saying something? Am I not hearing you? Turn your mic on. No, I still don't hear you. Am I? Je n'écoute rien, je n'entends rien. Let me see, maybe my mic is speakers. Check your mic to see if it's on. Go again.
Do you hear me?
Oh, now I hear you. Okay.
Okay, good. Yes, Prabhu, just concerning this last thing you were speaking about, what's the difference between sādvika-bhāva and vyabhichari-bhāva, because you were saying vyabhichari-bhāva is kind of coming up and down, but also we could say sādvika-bhāva is also coming up and down. Maybe. So what would be the difference between the two?
Okay, well, sattvikas are effects, right? They're almost unconscious effects. So you like, for instance, if you're watching or reading a story or something like that, and suddenly your tears come to your eyes, right? So the tears, yes, it's a temporary manifestation, or of course, some devotees, they spend a lot of time crying, but generally speaking, an ecstatic symptom, it might be brief, but it's an ecstatic symptom. It's not specifically an emotion. The vyabhichari bhavas are things like depression, anger, like things that pop up, in a relationship, right? So, these are a story. The sattvikas they might play a role in a story, but well, this is something we're going to have to talk about a lot more, because stories are essential, and we'll talk about that in relation with vibhavas. But in a story, there might be, the waves are coming. You have the main story is going on, but let's say the main characters, husband and wife, or boyfriend, girlfriend, or friends, or whatever the particular dramatic situation happens to be, and they might get angry at each other, they might lose faith in each other. All these different kinds of passing emotions come up. But let's say, for instance, if it's a love story, well, the girl loses faith in the boy, or the boy does something wrong, and whatever, all these different things are going on. The main mood is still going to be Madhura rasa, it's still going to be Ujjvala rasa, but those are all different things that arise up and then go down. So mana, right? Like if you have mana, the man lila that Radha and Krishna are arguing, and she doesn't talk to him for a while, or she tells him to get out, or whatever, like these things that might happen. And those emotions, those are all vyabhicharis. And each vyabhichari will be accompanied, you'll see, vyabhicharis are associated with sthāyi-bhāvas, and vyabhicharis are associated with certain anubhavas and certain sattvikas. For instance, the emotional experience of love is going to be different from the emotional experience of disgust, or the emotional experience of renunciation and shanta rasa. So when they make the delineation of all these different characteristics, they're usually clustered together. Like you'll see certain things that are clustered together with Ujjvala rasa, certain things that are clustered together with Vira rasa, and so on and so forth. Okay? We'll learn more about this very quickly.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Yeah, we're sitting at the edge of our seat, waiting for more.
Well, let's just do this short kirtan here. Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Jai Jai Shyam Sundar Madanna Mohan Vrindavana Chandra, Jai Jai Radha Raman Ras Bihari, Sri Gokulananda, Jai Jai Radha Kanta Radha Binod, Shri Radha Govinda, Jai Jai Raseshwari Binodini, Bhanukula Chandra, Jai Jai Lalita Vishakha Adi, Jato Sakhi Vrinda, Jai Jai Sri Rupa Manjari Adi, Manjari Ananga, Jai Jai Purnamasi Kunda Lata, Jaya Vira Vrinda, তোমরা কৃপা করি দেও হে যুগল চরণারবিন্দ দেহ যুগল চরণারবিন্দ দেহ যুগল চরণারবিন্দ দেহ যুগল চরণারবিন্দ জয় জয় রাধে কৃষ্ণ গোবিন্দ জয় জয় রাধে কৃষ্ণ গোবিন্দ রাধে গোবিন্দ রাধে গোবিন্দ রাধে গোবিন্দ রাধে গোবিন্দ রাধে গোবিন্দ রাধে গোবিন্দ জয় জয় রাধে কৃষ্ণ গোবিন্দ জয় জয় রাধে কৃষ্ণ গোবিন্দ রাধে কৃষ্ণ গোবিন্দ जय जय श्री गुरुदेव की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय 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 श्री गौर लीला की जय 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 वृंदावन लीला की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय निताय गौ प्रेमानंदी हरि हरि बोल जय जय श्री राधे जय जय श्री राधे जय जय श्री राधे श्याम गौर हरि बोल।